greatest adventure is what lies ahead. Today and tomorrow are yet to be said.
Hello, this is No One of Consequence, and first of all, I just want to say thanks for clicking on this video. This is just the first of what I hope will be many more videos to come. So what is this video series about? Well, it's the graphical retelling of the Dungeons & Dragons campaign that I have been running since 2014. The specific version of D&D that I'm using are the basic expert rules, which were published in 1981. Plus, of course, I have a house rules document as well. I should point out that this is not an in-person game. Instead, I'm hosting it on the Roll20 virtual tabletop. The reason I'm able to make these videos is soon after the campaign started, I began taking screenshots of the virtual tabletop during gameplay because, there would be notable events that would happen, and I wanted to capture those. The group I have, we meet weekly, and we play for between 3 and 3.5 hours each game session. Sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, but that's the typical. Obviously, in this series of videos, there's going to be a lot of spoilers, so if you ever plan to play through any of the adventures that I'm going to talk about, just be aware that there are going to be spoilers. All right, so just a little bit about me. I first began playing Dungeons & Dragons in late 1979 when I purchased the Holmes basic set, and there's the cover of the box set and the title page of the rules booklet, all of 48 pages. Soon after that, I switched to first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. At the time when I bought the Holmes Basic set, I didn't even understand that there were different editions of the game, but once I figured that out, then I switched to Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Played that for many years, and then the people that I was gaming with at that time, we all switched to the second edition of AD&D when those books were released in 1989. During all this time, of course, I was a player a lot, but I eventually found that I preferred to be the dungeon master rather than being a player. I just enjoyed running the game. Now, like a lot of people, as I got a little older and life started taking over, I began to have less and less time for gaming. And of course, friends go their own way as well. And so, beginning in the late 90s, I pretty much dropped off the game altogether. Plus, I was getting more into computer games, so what spare time I did have, I would often devote to playing computer games. Like, for example, Ultima Online. That was the first big one that I got into. Fast forward to 2012, and that was when I first became aware of the virtual tabletop concept, and I started looking into that, and I saw it as a way that I could get back into gaming just with the convenience of being able to just sit at your computer and play and not have to coordinate everything that's involved getting together with an in-person game. When I first started running a game on Roll20, Um, I tried to go back to first edition AD&D, but I found that there was a lot of dead space, dead time, going through the books, trying to look up rules, that sort of thing. And, it's one thing when that sort of thing happens and you're all sitting around in person on a game table. But my feeling was it was pretty awkward when you're all just logged into a computer. And anyway, so bottom line is, after about a year of running AD&D, I decided to switch to the BX rule set just because it's a much more rules light game, and there would be a lot less rule book flipping. All right, so what does this campaign consist of? Well, I wanted to start with the T1, the village of Hamlet. Um, that's a classic early starter adventure that most people are probably aware of. And you see there it says in the top left corner, the first of two modules. Well, that second module did not come out for several years. And when it did finally come out, it came out in the form of this T14 Temple of Elemental Evil, which incorporated the original T1 Village of Hamlet and then all of the adventures that come after that. I will say, if you ever decide you want to DM this yourself, I would say try to get both modules. Try to get both T1 in addition to T4. And the reason is because the original T1 module includes a lot more, say a lot more, it includes more information about the village than does the T1 4 reprint, if you will. It's not critical, but the original T1 is nice to have. So after T1 for Temple of Elemental Evil, the next adventure would be this one, G1, Steading of the Hill Giant Chief. Then following that would be G2, Glacial Rift of the Frost Giant Jarl. And finally, well, not finally, but next would be G3, Hall of the Fire Giant King. Then the series continues to progress, and next would come D1, Descent into the Depths of the Earth. Next is D2, Shrine of the Kuatoa. And then finally D3, Vault of the... Okay, I realize that the correct pronunciation is Drow. However, for many years, my friends and I, we didn't know that, and we always pronounced it Dro. And so even today, I still feel more comfortable pronouncing it Dro rather than Drow. But, whatever. I call it the Vault of the Dro. My players, who are some of them are more recent comers to the game, they will say Drow. So I say Dro, they say Drow. So it's no big deal. All right, so even though the Temple of Elemental Evil says it's for new characters, it can be tough for brand new characters. The things get dangerous fast, and a lot of brand new characters end up never making it past the first few encounters. So what I decided to do was have some introductory adventures to give the character some experience, and also some time for the players themselves to kind of gel as a group because, uh, as I said, this is on Roll20, and all my players were recruited uh, individually. None of us knew the others when this campaign started. So, again, I decided to do some intro adventures to facilitate that bonding process. I will say that I only have random screenshots for these early adventure sessions. Um, during these early days of the campaign, I had not yet formulated the idea of taking frequent and regular screenshots to create a ongoing um, record of the adventures. So again, for these first introductory adventures, I only have scattered random screenshots, but it's enough to illustrate what's going on. And so I'll just use what I have. All right, so before we could begin playing, everybody had to create characters. So I'll just quickly go through my character creation process. Um, Unlike what the rules, the BX rules call for, I allow roll 4d6, drop the lowest, add the remainder to get a total for an ability score. You can generate, you go through that process and generate a set of 6 ability scores. Then you repeat that process 6 times, which gives you a set of six sets of ability scores. You can pick whichever one of those sets that you like, and then you can arrange the scores as desired. Again, that's a deviation from the BX rules as written. But people go into the game already with an idea of what their character is that they want to play, and so I don't see any reason to penalize. Say if somebody wants to, be a fighter, and the first ability score they happen to roll is really low. I don't want to punish them for that. So that's why I allow a range as desired, so you can customize your ability scores to suit the kind of character that you really want to play. I allow first level characters to start at max hit points. Then after that, when you gain each level, you roll for your additional hit points. And unlike most versions of Dungeons and Dragons, Basic Expert has race as class. In other words, you have a fighter. Fighters are always human. Clerics are always human. Thieves are always human. Then you have dwarf and elf, and unlike first edition, for example, you don't have like a dwarf cleric or a elven fighter. They just are. A dwarf is pretty much a fighter. Elves act as fighters as well, but they can also cast magic spells. Some of the basic house rules that I have: clerics get a spell at first level. That's not in the rules. As written, clerics don't get any spells until second level. I tweaked the thieving tables to give them a better chance of success at lower levels. Elves can choose to be either a magic user or a cleric. And as written, elves only have access to magic user spells, but at character creation, if you have an elf, you can choose cleric if you wish. I gave dwarves special melee bonuses as per first edition, and halflings, which is another race as class in BX. I gave them limited infravision and some very basic thief abilities. I didn't want them to replace thieves, but I gave them a few skills just so because otherwise they're really just a miniature fighter. And if you're going to do that, then you might as well just play a dwarf. So Anyway, those are, like I say, those are just some of the basic house rules that I have. All right, so next we'll introduce the player characters that were created. First up is his name is Aramis, who is a fighter, and as I mentioned before, fighters are by default human. You can see the ability scores there. This template that I used is from the original basic D&D character sheets. I did not fill in things like armor class, hit points, saving throws, because those things are going to change over time. And another thing I should point out is in BX, you just have either lawful, for alignment, you just have either lawful, neutral, or chaotic. Whereas, again, in first edition, you can have like lawful good or chaotic neutral, combinations of things. So that's why here, for example, you see only lawful as this alignment. All right, so there's Aramis. Then we have a cleric. The player called him Duke Lionheart. And you can see his ability scores there. Next we have Garrett, who is a thief. Again, these are all humans. And his ability scores. Then we have a dwarf, whose player named him Grom Greatbeard, and his ability scores. We have another dwarf, Obrak Firebeard. Have a halfling, Rory Hearthfoot. And then finally, we have the party magic user, Thorol, and his ability scores. Some of these characters are played by the same player. So just for future reference, Aramis, the first one, and Thorol are played by the same person. Obrak, the dwarf, and Garrett, the thief, are played by the same person. And then Rory, the halfling, Grom, the dwarf, and Duke, the cleric, were all played by separate people as well. So we have 7 characters run by a total of 5 players. So, where is the campaign located? Well, in the world of Greyhawk, of course. All of those modules are set in the world of Greyhawk, and Greyhawk has always been my favorite campaign setting. And so, yeah, so I just naturally went to that as my default game setting. All right, so where in the world of Greyhawk? Well, here's a regional map screenshot capture. If you look on the far right, you will see just barely on the map the village of Hamlet, which, of course, was the first module that I showed the cover of earlier in the video, and that's where the characters will eventually end up. However, for these intro adventures, I wanted them to be, somewhere else, not too close to Hamlet, far enough away, so that when they went to Hamlet, it would be, like starting a new campaign. They wouldn't be familiar with the setting. So where I put them, if you look over on the left-hand side of the map, it's not shown on this map, but the country is the Archclerisy of Valuna, and specifically, they were started in. I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced. I always pronounced it Vala Real. That's just my pronunciation. Again, I'm not really sure how it's intended to be pronounced, but that's what we all called it. So that was going to be the starting village. and the base for these intro adventures that I talked about. All right, so I needed to have a actual village for them to base out of, and so this is the module or supplement, as it says here, that I went with. If you want to have a look at this, you can go to dragonsfoot.org, and it's a free download there. This is shows a handout of the village that I gave to the players when they first arrived, so that they could see where everything is and decide where they might want to go. And if you look, you see all the usual basic things that you would expect to find in a small Dungeons and Dragons village. And then this is a zoomed out view of the actual village in Roll20. You can see all the floor plans, everything's furnished, and the players would be spending a lot of time in a lot of these different places over the course of these introductory adventures. All right, so once they got established in the village, then it was time for the first adventure. And for that, I used this module called the Spider Farm. And again, this is a free download from Dragon's Foot. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can go there and get it. Now, like I said, I don't really have a lot of screenshots for these very early adventures. I had not yet come up with the idea of coming up with a journal, as if you will. So for this one, I only have a couple of screenshots to illustrate. So this was one early in the adventure, and I don't even remember why I took this. I had Rory's in-game character clicked on, and you can see the other characters. Some of the other characters, some of them I'm sure are behind the window showing Rory's character. But you can see there's been some combat, there between Obrak and Grom. There's a dead goblin. There's another goblin up there by Thorol, and this was a very basic primitive map that I made for this adventure. At this point I was still very new to Roll20 and just trying to learn how to use it, and so that's reflected in the simplicity of the map here. Later I found some pre-made maps for this module, and that's what this shows. There's a part of the adventure where you have to go down in some tunnels on a rescue mission and fight giant spiders, and that's what's being depicted here. And then finally, I had this screenshot. This was after they had finished the adventure and they were preparing to go back to the village. And you see Rory and Thorol there with the horses and wagon, and one of the workers from the spider farm. I don't know why he was there. I don't remember. It's a long time ago. But there it is. So they finished that adventure. Unfortunately, at this point, the player who is running Grom the Dwarf dropped from the campaign, and the reason was because, most of us are, of course, here in the U.S., but the player for Grom was in Germany, and so there was a pretty big time difference, and the game was run early in the evening, our time. So, of course, because of the time difference, it was very late at night for him before the game even started, and then ran well into the after midnight hours. And so, after that first adventure, he just said the time difference was too great of a challenge for him, and so he said he would have to drop from the party. So Grom leaves. The remaining characters players felt that they still had enough. The remaining players felt they still had enough characters that they didn't need to recruit anyone else. So they were just down one character at this point. So then we moved on to the next adventure, and this is another free download from Dragon's Foot if you're interested in grabbing it. The backstory is the players go back to the village, and there's this retired magic user wizard that lives in the forest outside the village, and he made it a point to regularly come into town, but he hadn't been seen for a while. And so the players are asked to go out to his cottage and just make sure he's all right. And they get there, the place is ransacked, no one's there. Then they go down into the cellar of the place, and there are several goblins and hobgoblins down there, and there's a big battle. Um, you can see in this screenshot, I don't remember it, but obviously they took at least one of the goblins prisoner, probably to find out what's going on. You know, where's Harold and all that. You'll see a new character there, Pillman. Um, Pillman was an NPC in the village. He's a farm worker, but he always had dreams of becoming an adventurer, and so he persuades the characters to take him on as a hireling, and so that's why he's here. Especially, I just mentioned that Grom left, and they didn't think they needed another player character, but they did decide to go ahead and take Pillman on as a hireling just for a little extra firepower. So that's who he is and why he's there. What the characters find out from the goblin is that Harold is. Well, let me take that back. They don't really find out anything from him, but what they do is follow the tracks of the goblins through the forest. There was a big crowd of them, and so they leave a pretty clear trail to follow, and they follow them back to this abandoned mine that they were using as a base, and this is the entrance to the mine. I grabbed a screenshot. You can see the characters there. Not quite everyone is there. They may just been outside of the frame. But anyway, this was the entrance where they were getting ready to go in. And I didn't have any other screenshots from this whole adventure except at the end when the big bad evil guy, this hobgoblin chieftain, escapes out this hidden escape tunnel. So he gets away, but the characters got a lot of loot out of his lair, which they've piled up here, that they're going to load back on their wagon and take back to the village. One of the things that the characters find out in the Hobgoblin chieftain's personal effects is that there was a spy in the village who'd been secretly working with them. Their plan was to take over the village, and with the understanding that he would be made the lord of the village or whatever. And if you look on the upper right corner of this map, you see a business called Istan's Extraordinary Elixirs, and this guy he fancies himself as an alchemist, but what he makes really isn't effective. But it turns out that he was really jealous of this Harold the Mage. And so they find out from the Hobgoblin's papers that it was Istan who put them on to Harold, and which was why they had gone and raided his cottage. And so when the players return to town, they have that information that Istan there is a traitor within the village. Um, you'll see here the note down here. It says it was somewhere during this time that the original player for Duke Lionheart left. And just like with the other person, the player for Duke um, was in Europe. I believe he was in, I believe it was Dutch. So not far from Germany. And so there's, and the reason I say a similar time difference. So just like with the first guy, the time difference was proving to be a challenge for him, and so he decided to leave the campaign. However, he had the only cleric in the party, and so rather than his character Duke Lionheart just disappearing, the person who was running the halfling Rory decided that he would just adopt and take over Duke and run that character as well. Um, One of the results when the characters get back to town, they go to the sheriff. There, you see his place across the street from the inn on the left side of the map, and they tell him about Istan and show him the papers proving that he's a traitor. And so they all go and get Istan and bring him back to the sheriff's office and put him in jail. And that night, when everyone's back at the inn, what no one realized at the time is that in addition to being a poor alchemist, Istan was also a low level thief. And so during the night, he was able to pick the lock and get out of his jail cell and escape. And the players find that out the next morning when the sheriff comes over to the inn and tells them what happened. So, of course, the next adventure is to go after Istan and bring him to justice. And that's the name of the next adventure here, which again you can get from Dragon's Foot. Um, Most of the adventuring, they track Istan. They come to another abandoned mine, and there's quite a bit of fighting because this place is where the various hobgoblins and goblins are assembling their forces for the attack on the village. And so, what this screenshot shows is the players bust in on the war room of all the monsters as they're planning how they're going to attack the village. And Istan was among them. And so the bottom line is they defeated all the leaders, but you can see them there on this map, and then they found the secret room where the war chest of the monsters, some other goods that they had are being kept, and you can see that Istan is there as well. They did not kill Istan; they managed to capture him alive. To take him back to town for justice. You see another person there next to Istan named Wilbur. Wilbur was a prisoner that they found at one point during this adventure. He had been a caravan guard that the goblins and hobgoblins had attacked, and he was captured alive and brought back here and was in a prison cell. Um, So yeah, so they rescued Wilbur, gave him some weapons and armor from the hobgoblins, and he joined up to help out in exchange for his freedom. Um, the next screenshot I have is when the characters are leaving the area. You can see all the party here. There had been some other additions as well. In addition to Wilbur, there near him, you see another person named Quan. Quan was also captured in the same caravan raid as Wilbur. He was a wagon driver. The monsters had taken him alive and brought him back here. So it was Wilbur and Quan were being held together in the prison, and they were both rescued by the characters. And then you see Istan there. Um, and the loaded into the wagon is not only all the loot that they got, but also you'll see Rory the halfling and Pillman. Both of them had died in that big boss fight that was on the previous screenshot. And so they brought them out and loaded their bodies onto the back of the wagon. And then finally, down there beneath the wagon, you'll see a dog, Felipe. Felipe was a guard dog that they had bought in the village and had brought along as well. And so there's the group leaving the boss hobgoblin mine. So I had this screenshot. The characters get back to town. They took Istan back to the jail again, and this time they made sure that he didn't have any lockpicks hidden on him, and the jail cell would be doubly secured to make sure that he didn't escape again. So meanwhile, the characters, the party players, were deciding what to do next. The the characters had acquired enough wealth by this point where they felt they had enough money that they could pay to have Rory resurrected. However, they didn't have enough money for two people to be brought back. So, unfortunately, poor Pillman, the hireling, ended up in the village church graveyard. And you can see that there at the top. And then the bottom shows Rory loaded into the character's wagon with Wilbur and Quan about to set out to take him to be resurrected. If you look on this map, this is that regional map again. You'll see again on the left-hand center, the left-hand side, you see the village where they're at, the Valerial, as I pronounce it. The nearest big city where they could take someone to be resurrected was there in the upper left-hand corner. The Varnish is how I pronounce it. There's no scale on this map, but I had measured it out, and it was about 50 miles. So you got a 50-mile trip one way, then going through the process of having a character raised, and then per the rules, a character that's raised has to spend quite a bit of time resting before they're able to do anything again. So, and then there would be the trip back to the village. So this is going to be a long process, and the characters weren't going to wait around. They didn't want to spend their time doing all that, so that's why they sent Quan and Wilbur, and then they were going to stay here in the village and continue with the campaign. So the next adventure is this one. It's called the Vile Worm, and I got this module from Drive Through RPG, but it's no longer available there. In fact, I searched around and I couldn't find it available anywhere. Um, if you have used Drive Through RPG, you have your library which shows all your purchases, and you can re-download anything that you might need to. And you can see this module listed in my library, but if you click on it, it just says this no longer available. So I don't know why this module was pulled, but apparently it has been, which is a shame. I thought it was a good adventure. The premise, and I don't remember if this was in the module or if I made it up, but there's a small family farm in the woods out from the village, and they would come to the village on a pretty regular basis to sell produce from their farm. And just kind of like with Harold the mage, no one had seen them for a while. And so the characters are asked to go out to their farm and check on them and see if everything's all right. And so they get there, and the place is deserted. It's not shown in the screenshot, but obviously there had been a struggle inside the cabin, and none of the family members are there. There's some farm animals penned up, but they hadn't been. They had no food or water. They had obviously been that way for at least a few days, and so the characters, it's not shown here, but the characters gave them food and water, and then they set out to try and trace what happened to the family. And just like before, they do find a lot of footprints through the forest, and were able to track where these people might have gone, or try to find out what happened to them. And so while they are going through and by now it's like really the deep forest, and they're encountered by this wild hermit guy dressed in furs, and he has with him a pet wolf and a giant lynx, and he seemed friendly enough, and he just said just like the name implies, he's a hermit. He just lives out here in the woods and doesn't like civilization. But he agreed to help the party. He said he's very familiar with these woods, and he agreed to help the party try to track down this missing family. So they continue traveling, and they eventually come to this gigantic tree with a hollow trunk. And it's obviously that someone has been living here, but it's deserted at this time. But poking around under some leaves, they find a trap door in the floor of this hollowed out tree trunk. And so they go down there, and it's some levels of, there's multiple levels going deeper underground. I grabbed this one screenshot. There was basically just a sinkhole in the ground. And of course, the characters had some rope with them, and so they had to drive in some stakes, tie off the rope, and lower themselves down through the sinkhole to go even deeper. And that's what's being shown here. And I skipped a part earlier in that adventure. They found the wife and the child of this farm family in a cage, and they said that their father had been taken off by a wild looking hermit guy that said that's who had captured them and brought them here in the first place. So obviously that hermit that they had encountered in the forest, they by now they realize he's behind it all along. and he didn't come with them when they came down into the tunnels beneath the tree. But now they know that it was actually him all along. But the characters get down here, and you see that hole in the ground, and there were some carrion crawlers come out of it. That's what this guy was doing, was bringing prisoners down here and feeding them to the carrion crawler. But they find the father from the farm family down here. He hadn't been eaten yet, and so they managed to kill the monsters and rescue him. And you can see all the bones from previous victims um, lying about as well. Um, they get back outside, and the hermit guy and his animals are waiting for them. There's a big fight. Also, the tree itself starts attacking the characters. It's starts swinging its branches around. It's not like a animated tree, and that it can walk around. Like the ants, for example. It's rooted in place, but it can swing its branches and attack. And as it turns out, the tree was the actual bad guy. It had the ability to take over a person's mind, and that's what had happened to this hermit. The tree had taken over his mind and was forcing him to bring victims to the pits underneath the tree. Presumably, the tree was feeding off of it, the victims as well. And so the characters fought the tree and managed to set it on fire. And once they had defeated the tree, then the hermit was released from his mind control, and he was back to normal. And as it turns out, he's not really a bad guy after all. He had just been under the spell of this tree. So the characters solve all that. They free the hermit from his mind control. They rescue the farm family and get out of there. And they take the farm family back to their farm, escort them back there. Everything's cool. And the hermit and his pets go back off into the forest to do their thing. So the players go back to the village, and by now it is on the Greyhawk calendar. The month that they started in is the equivalent of the month of June, and at the end of that month is a week-long festival. It's called Rich Fest, and it is kind of like a midsummer's festival. And so I had that happen in the village here. And for the backdrop, I use this module. This one's available on ttrpg if you're interested. It's a similar premise. There's like a multiple day festival going on, but there's a backdrop to it. There's like animals get killed. There's things going on at night, and so during the day, the characters can participate in contests at the festival, but then there's also this mystery going on in the background that has to be solved as well. And this is the only screenshot I have, is the festival, and there are several NPCs, as you can see, scattered around with different things. You can see the farm family there on the right hand side that they just rescued. Some others as well. There's gambling, food, that sort of thing. You can see some of the. Oh, you should see most of or most if not all the characters. If you look in the very bottom right hand corner of the map, you see there's Garrett and Thorol, and then on the bottom left-hand side of the map, you see some of the other characters. Aramis, Obrak, Duke is there. Um, it was at this time that the player who has the character Rory, who of course, is not here right now because he's being taken to the city to be resurrected. He decided he wanted to bring in a new character, and so Varys the Elf joins the party, and I use the premise of this midsummer festival as the reason why he's in town, and he ends up joining the characters. And here's a bigger view of the festival. If you look on the bottom row on the left hand side, uh, you can see Varys' character standing there near Duke, and so he was here as well. And he joins up with the party. And I'd mentioned in my house rules that elves could be either magic user or cleric. They could have access to one or the other types of spells. The player for Varys chose to make him a magic using elf, not a cleric. So that's what you'll be seeing him do in the future. All right, so that's all I got for this time around. Thanks for watching, and if this is interesting to you, then please consider subscribing to my channel so you can be notified when new episodes are uploaded. Thanks again for watching.